Admiral Josephine Drake stood at the observation deck of the UES Hyperion, her weathered face reflected in the reinforced plasteel window as she watched the emergency beacon's signal pulse across the void. The Deep Space Research Station Helios had gone dark 3 hours ago, its last transmission cut mid-sentence. 20 years of space exploration had taught her that silence in space usually meant death. "Admiral, sensor sweep complete," Lieutenant Priya Patel reported from her station, dark eyes fixed on the holographic display. "No signs of conventional weapons fire or hull breach, but we're detecting unusual energy signatures. Nothing matches our database." Drake nodded, her silver-streaked hair catching the soft blue light of the bridge instruments. "Continue monitoring." "Commander Harrison, status of the rescue team?" Owen Harrison, the Hyperion's tactical officer, looked up from his console. "Strike Team Aegis is prepped and ready in the hangar bay. Just waiting for your go order, ma'am." Before Drake could respond, the ship's AI, Nova, materialized as a translucent blue hologram. "Admiral, detecting multiple spatial anomalies forming around the station. Gravitational readings are off the charts." The void before them suddenly twisted, reality itself seeming to fold and tear. Through these wounds in space emerged vessels unlike anything human eyes had ever seen. They appeared to be carved from living crystal, their surfaces refracting starlight in impossible ways. Each ship pulsed with an inner light that seemed to drink in the darkness around it. "Battle stations." Drake's command cut through the stunned silence on the bridge. "All hands, combat positions. Lieutenant Patel, get me everything you can on those ships. Harrison, warm up the defense grid but do not engage unless fired upon." As klaxons blared throughout the Hyperion, the crystalline vessels surrounded the silent research station. Beams of prismatic energy lanced out from their hulls, not attacking but scanning, probing. "Admiral," Nova's voice carried an unusual note of concern, "I'm detecting biological signatures within those vessels, but they're impossible. The beings appear to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously." Drake's jaw tightened. First contact. After centuries of searching the stars, humanity had finally encountered an alien civilization. And of course, it had to happen here, now, with a missing research station and unknown hostiles. "Open all frequencies," she ordered. "Let's try talking before this gets ugly." The crystalline ships suddenly ceased their scanning. For a moment, space itself seemed to hold its breath. Then a signal pierced through their communications array, not in radio waves or standard transmissions, but directly into their minds. "We are the Nexari. You have entered forbidden space. Your presence here violates the ancient accords." The voice resonated within their skulls, each word carrying undertones of emotions and concepts that human language couldn't quite capture. Drake fought back a wave of vertigo as alien thoughts brushed against her consciousness. "This is Admiral Josephine Drake of the United Earth ship Hyperion. We're here investigating a distress signal from our research station. We mean no hostile intent. Your kind always claims peace while bringing war. We have watched your species spread across the stars like a virus, consuming, expanding, destroying. No more." The crystalline ships began to move, their formation tightening around both the station and the Hyperion. Energy buildups detected by their sensors suggested weapon systems charging. "Commander Harrison," Drake said quietly, "tactical analysis?" Harrison's fingers flew over his console. "Their tech is beyond anything we've seen, Admiral. Conservative estimate? We wouldn't last 5 minutes in a direct fight." Drake nodded, mind racing through options. They were outgunned, outmaneuvered, and facing an enemy with technology that might as well be magic. But humanity hadn't come this far by backing down. "Nova, begin encrypting all sensor data and transmit it back to Fleet Command. Lieutenant Patel, ready the quantum entanglement communicator. If this goes south, Earth needs to know what they're facing." Your defiance is noted, but futile, the alien voice resonated again. Your species requires containment. The research station's transgression will be the last. The hell it will, Drake muttered, then raised her voice. All hands, prepare for emergency maneuvers. Harrison, target the lead ship's apparent sensor arrays. Patel, divert all available power to shields. As the Hyperion's crew braced for combat, Drake took one last look at the crystalline fleet. First contact had gone sideways, as the pessimists always said it would. But if these Nexari thought humanity would go quietly into the night, they were about to learn a harsh lesson about human determination. The space around them crackled with building energy as both sides prepared to fire the first shots of what would become humanity's greatest war for survival. The Emergency Council chamber of the Interstellar Defense Coalition buzzed with tension as Fleet Admiral Drake's transmission played out before representatives from Earth's most powerful nations. The holographic display showed the crystalline Nexari ships in all their terrible beauty, their attack on the Hyperion, and the desperate escape that followed. Director Rajesh Sharma of the IDC's Strategic Operations Division stood at the center of the chamber, his usually immaculate uniform showing signs of the sleepless nights since first contact. Ladies and gentlemen, what you've just witnessed represents the greatest threat humanity has ever faced. The Nexari possess technology that makes our most advanced ships look like wooden sailing vessels. Then perhaps we should sue for peace, suggested the Chinese representative, her face grave. If we cannot match them militarily. A new voice cut through the chamber, accompanied by heavy footsteps. Peace was never an option. All heads turned to see a towering figure enter, Ambassador Ziwextal of the Archean Collective, his bronze-scaled skin reflecting the chamber's lights. The reptiloid diplomat's presence was unexpected. The Archeans had maintained strict neutrality in human affairs since first contact 5 years ago. Ambassador, Sharma acknowledged, hiding his surprise. We weren't aware the collective was monitoring this situation. Ziwextal's vertical pupils narrowed. The Nexari are known to us. They are ancient, powerful, and utterly convinced of their own superiority. They view younger races as infections to be contained or eliminated. Your species' rapid expansion into space triggered their intervention protocols. The room erupted in overlapping voices until Director Sharma raised his hand for silence. Ambassador, if you have insight into this threat, we're listening. The Archean moved to the holographic display, his clawed hand manipulating the controls with surprising delicacy. New images appeared, worlds of crystal and light, vast fleets moving between dimensions, and devastation on a scale that made even hardened military officers pale. The Nexari once ruled this arm of the galaxy, Ziwextal explained. They see themselves as gardeners, pruning what they consider dangerous growth. My own people faced them 10,000 years ago. We survived only by going into hiding, appearing primitive and non-threatening. His tail lashed in remembered anger. We have watched them destroy dozens of promising civilizations. Why tell us this now? Admiral Yuki Tanaka asked from her seat on the military council. Why offer help after years of neutrality? Ziwextal's expression shifted into what might have been a smile. Because in all our years of watching humanity, we've seen something unique. You are adaptable, resourceful, and most importantly, unpredictable. The Nexari's greatest weakness is their rigid thinking. They cannot comprehend species that don't follow their logical patterns. The holographic display shifted again, showing technical specifications for advanced weapon systems and defense technologies. The collective is prepared to offer full military and technological alliance. Combined with your innovative tactics and our ancient knowledge, we might finally have a chance to end the Nexari threat. Director Sharma studied the alien diplomat carefully. And what does the collective want in return? Survival, Ziwextal answered simply. The Nexari will not stop with Earth. Every spacefaring race in this sector will face their judgment eventually. Together, we might stand a chance. Alone, we fall one by one. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had just been thrust onto a galactic stage they barely understood, facing an enemy that had dominated space when Earth's most advanced civilization was still working with stone tools. Admiral Tanaka stood, her weathered face set with determination. "Director, with your permission, I'd like to begin immediate integration of Archean tech with our fleet. If we're going to win this, we need every advantage we can get." Sharma nodded slowly. "Ambassador Ziwextal, I believe we have the beginnings of an alliance. But we'll need more than just the Archeans. Are there others who might join us?" The reptiloid's eyes gleamed. "The Nexari have many enemies, hiding in the shadows of space. Once word spreads that someone is finally standing against them." He left the thought unfinished. "Then let's give them something to rally behind," Sharma declared. "Admiral Tanaka, begin the fleet modifications." "Ambassador, we'll need everything you can tell us about Nexari tactics and weaknesses. Ladies and gentlemen, as of this moment, we are at war." As the chamber erupted into activity, Ziwextal watched with careful consideration. The Archeans had waited millennia for this moment, a species with both the will and the potential to challenge the Nexari. Whether humanity would prove equal to the task remained to be seen, but for the first time in eons, hope flickered in the darkness between stars. The next few weeks saw an unprecedented transformation of Earth's military capabilities. Archean crystalline technology merged with human innovation, creating hybrid ships that could match the Nexari's dimensional maneuvers. Training centers worldwide incorporated alien combat techniques with human tactical doctrine. And through it all, more allies emerged from hiding, the silicon-based lithoids, the energy beings known as the Luminari, each bringing their own unique contributions to the alliance. The galaxy was changing. The age of hiding was over. The war for survival had begun, and humanity found itself at the center of the greatest coalition of species the galaxy had ever seen. The Nexari's judgment was coming, but this time, they would face a united front of races determined to forge their own destiny among the stars. Captain Nadia Santos stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, now a hybrid of human engineering and Archean crystal technology. The ship hummed with power that would have been incomprehensible just months ago. Through the viewport, she watched as the combined fleet assembled, the largest gathering of diverse species ever seen in the galaxy. All systems integrated and functioning at optimal levels, reported her XO, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Bishop, his dark hands dancing across the crystalline control interface. The lithoid dreadnoughts are in position, and the Luminari energy vessels have completed their dimensional anchoring. Nadia nodded, checking the tactical display where hundreds of ships moved in perfect formation. The fleet represented 6 different species, each bringing unique capabilities to what could be their only chance to strike at the heart of Nexari power. "Priority transmission from command," announced their communications officer, a lithoid named Crix whose silicon-based form sparkled under the bridge lights. "Admiral Tanaka is ready to begin the operation briefing." The holographic display flared to life, showing Admiral Tanaka alongside Ambassador Ziwextal and a Luminari elder whose energy form cast ethereal light across the command center. "Operation Starfall begins in 6 hours, Tanaka announced without preamble. "Thanks to intelligence provided by our allies, we've identified a critical Nexari facility in the Cygnus Void. This installation appears to be their primary dimensional anchor point in our sector of space." The display shifted to show a massive crystalline structure suspended in the void, pulsing with otherworldly energy. Ziwextal stepped forward, his scaled form imposing even in holographic form. "The Nexari require these anchor points to maintain their presence in our dimension," the Archean explained. "Destroy this facility, and we cut off their ability to bring in reinforcements from their home dimension. But be warned, they will defend it with everything they have." The Luminari elder, whose name translated roughly to "Song of Distant Stars," added their thoughts directly into the minds of all present. "The facility's defensive systems operate on principles your species would consider impossible. conventional tactics will fail. Which is exactly why we're not using conventional tactics, Tanaka replied with a grim smile. Captain Santos, your ship will lead the primary strike team. The Prometheus's hybrid systems make it uniquely suited for what we have planned. Nadia leaned forward, studying the tactical projections. The approach will be nearly impossible, Admiral. Their sensor grid extends across multiple dimensions. That's where the Luminari come in, Tanaka explained. They've developed a way to temporarily shift our ships into a state of dimensional flux, existing in multiple realities simultaneously, just like the Nexari themselves. It's never been attempted with vessels of our size, but our scientists believe it will work. The process is dangerous, Song of Distant Stars warned. Your crews will experience reality differently during the shift. Many may not survive the psychological strain. My crew volunteered for this mission, Nadia stated firmly. We understand the risks. The briefing continued, laying out a plan that seemed equal parts brilliant and insane. The lithoid dreadnoughts would launch a frontal assault, their crystalline hulls naturally resistant to Nexari weapons. Meanwhile, the Luminari would create a dimensional corridor through which a strike team led by the Prometheus would slip through. As the briefing concluded, Ambassador Ziwayextal addressed them one final time. The Nexari believe themselves superior because they can perceive and manipulate multiple realities. Today, we show them they are not as unique as they think. Today, we demonstrate that evolution has many paths, and none is supreme over others. Hours later, as the Prometheus's crew made final preparations, Nadia walked through her ship. In engineering, human technicians worked alongside Archean specialists, fine-tuning the crystalline matrices that powered their new systems. In the medical bay, doctors consulted with Luminari healers about treating potential dimensional sickness. Status report, she called out upon returning to the bridge. All stations report ready, Captain, Bishop confirmed. The Luminari energy matrix is synchronized with our systems. Crix has established quantum links with all allied vessels. Good. Nadia took her command chair, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. Send word to the fleet. Operation Starfall is go. The battle began exactly as planned, and immediately descended into controlled chaos. The lithoid dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace in a devastating alpha strike, their crystalline weapons shattering the outer defense grid. Nexari ships responded immediately, their impossible geometries twisting space itself as they brought their full might to bear. Then came the moment of truth. As the Luminari began their dimensional shift, reality itself seemed to blur around the Prometheus. Crew members reported seeing multiple versions of themselves, each moving slightly differently. Some began to scream as their minds struggled to process existing in several dimensions at once. Hold steady. Nadia commanded, fighting back her own nausea as she watched her hands phase through solid objects. Remember your training. Focus on the mission. Through the dimensional flux, they saw the Nexari facility as it truly was, not just a single structure, but many versions of itself overlaid across multiple realities. Its defenses were oriented toward conventional space, leaving it vulnerable to attacks from the dimensional void itself. Weapons free, Nadia ordered as they emerged from the flux corridor. Show these arrogant bastards what happens when you underestimate humanity and its allies. The Prometheus's hybrid weapons unleashed hell, each shot existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Nexari facility's crystalline surface began to crack, the damage propagating across all its dimensional instances. Multiple hostile contacts. Bishop shouted. They're adapting to our dimensional state. As expected, Nadia replied calmly. Execute pattern Delta. Let's show them some good old-fashioned human unpredictability. The battle that followed would be studied for generations to come, a dance of ships through dimensions, where conventional physics took a back seat to impossible maneuvers and reality-bending tactics. The Prometheus led the charge, its human crew's inherent adaptability allowing them to improvise as the situation demanded, while their alien allies provided capabilities beyond human comprehension. Operation Starfall would change the course of the war, but its true significance lay in what it represented, proof that different species, working together, could achieve what none could do alone. The age of hiding from the Nexari was over. The age of resistance had begun. Dr. Samira Patel moved carefully through the crystalline corridors of the captured Nexari research facility, each step sending ripples of light through the translucent floor. The joint human-alien research team had spent weeks trying to decrypt the vast data archives they'd recovered during Operation Starfall, and what they discovered had shaken them to their core. "You need to see this," she called to Professor Zaltek, her Archean colleague whose scaled form towered over her own. "The genetic sequences we found, they're not just data. They're memories." The facility's central chamber hummed with energy as holographic displays showed strands of impossibly complex molecular structures. Luminary scientists floated nearby, their energy forms pulsing with concern as they analyzed the data. "These aren't research notes," Samira continued, her voice tight with controlled horror. "They're trophy cases. The Nexari didn't just destroy civilizations, they preserved them, encoded their entire genetic and cultural history into crystalline matrices." "We sense great pain here," communicated Valesh, the lead Luminari researcher. "Echoes of billions of minds, trapped between dimensions." Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Security Chief James Rodriguez burst into the chamber, his cybernetically enhanced eye glowing red with threat assessments. "We've got incoming. Multiple Nexari vessels just quantum-tunneled past our defense grid." The research team scrambled to secure their findings as the facility's shields activated. Through the crystalline walls, they could see space itself tear open as massive Nexari ships emerged, their forms more organic and terrifying than ever before. "This is different," Zaltek growled, his warrior instincts from before the Archean scientific age coming to the fore. "These aren't their standard vessel configurations." A transmission cut through all communication channels, accompanied by a psychic pressure that made human minds recoil. "You have accessed forbidden knowledge. You have seen what was not meant to be seen. The containment protocols must be escalated." The voice belonged to the Nexari overseer, a being that existed simultaneously across multiple dimensions. Its words carried undertones of emotions alien to human comprehension, not just anger or threat, but concepts that human languages had no words to describe. "Defensive positions," Rodriguez ordered as security teams moved to protect the research staff. "Dr. Patel, grab everything you can. This data has to reach command." As Samira and her team rushed to download their findings, the Nexari attack began. But instead of simply destroying the facility, their weapons fired beams of crystalline energy that began transforming everything they touched. Walls, equipment, even people began to crystallize, their physical forms being encoded into the same kind of storage matrices they'd been studying. "They're not trying to kill us," Samira realized with growing horror. "They're trying to preserve us." Through the chaos, Professor Zaltek accessed the facility's main database, his clawed hands flying over crystal controls. "The genetic archives, they're not just trophies. They're templates. The Nexari aren't gardeners, they're collectors, preserving what they consider worthy specimens before reshaping reality to their preferences." "Correct," the overseer's voice resonated through their minds. "Your species show promise, but are too chaotic, too unpredictable. You will be preserved, your essence refined and perfected. This is not destruction, it is ascension." "Like hell it is," Rodriguez snarled, ordering his teams to fall back to defensive positions around the research center. "Dr. Patel, please tell me you found something we can use against these monsters." Samira's fingers flew across her quantum tablet, correlating data from multiple sources. "Maybe. The preservation process, it's not just storage. They literally encode beings into higher dimensional matrices." But the process requires tremendous energy and... Her eyes widened. And it's vulnerable to quantum interference. The facility shook as more Nexary ships arrived, their crystalline weapons beginning to transform entire sections of the structure. But Samira had seen something in the data, a pattern that could change everything. Professor Zoltek, the Archean crystals in your ancient temples, they're not just decorative, are they? They're weapons, designed to disrupt dimensional encoding. The massive Archean's eyes widened in revelation. The ancient texts, we thought they were religious symbols, but they were instructions, left by our ancestors. Chief Rodriguez, get me a secure channel to command, Samira ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. And someone find me Admiral Drake. The Nexary aren't invincible, they're scared. That's why they preserve species instead of simply destroying them. They're afraid of losing control, of chaos overcoming their perfect order. As security teams held off the advancing crystallization wave, Samira and her colleagues raced to compile their findings. The truth about the Nexary was finally clear: they weren't just conquerors or gardeners, but cosmic librarians gone mad with power, attempting to catalog and control all of reality itself. The facility's defenses were failing, sections of it becoming transparent as they were encoded into higher dimensions. But for the first time, the allied species had more than just hope, they had understanding. The Nexary's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness, and in their arrogance, they had preserved the very knowledge that could lead to their downfall. Transmission complete, Rodriguez reported as crystalline transformation crept closer to their position. Data received by command. Now we just have to survive long enough for them to use it. Samira looked around at her colleagues, human, Archean, Luminari, and others, all fighting together against an enemy that sought to reduce the infinite diversity of life to perfectly preserved, sterile specimens. We'll do more than survive, she declared. We'll show them that chaos and order, diversity and unity, aren't opposites, they're essential parts of what makes life worth preserving in the first place. The battle for the research facility was just beginning, but its discoveries would change the nature of the war itself. The Nexary's true nature was exposed, and with it, the key to their eventual defeat. The question now was whether the allied species could survive long enough to use this knowledge, or if they too would join the countless civilizations preserved in crystalline stasis, perfect, unchanging, and utterly dead. The combined fleet of the allied species hung in the void near the dimensional nexus point identified in Dr. Patel's research. Admiral Drake stood on the bridge of the flagship Hyperion, now transformed by Archean crystal technology and Luminari energy matrices into something that would have been unimaginable months ago. Status report, she commanded, watching as the massive armada moved into position. All ships report ready, Lieutenant Commander Bishop responded from his station. The lithoid dreadnoughts have deployed their quantum disruptors. Luminari vessels are maintaining the dimensional anchor field. Professor Zoltek, who had insisted on being present for this final battle, studied the tactical displays with his ancient warrior's eye. The Nexary will come. They cannot allow their preservation matrices to be threatened. As if summoned by his words, space began to fracture. Nexary ships emerged by the hundreds, their crystalline forms more fluid and organic than ever before. At their center loomed a vessel that defied comprehension, the Overseer's flagship, existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. You cannot stop the preservation, the Overseer's thoughts boomed across all frequencies. Order must prevail. Chaos must be contained. All ships, battle positions, Drake ordered calmly. Remember the plan. Everything we've learned, everything we've built together, has led to this moment. The battle began not with weapons, but with song. The Luminari vessels projected harmonic frequencies that Dr. Patel had discovered in the ancient Archean temples, frequencies that disrupted the Nexary's dimensional encoding process. The enemy ships shuddered, their perfect crystalline forms showing signs of strain. Now! Drake commanded. All ships, execute pattern Omega. The Allied fleet moved as one, but not in the precise, orderly formations the Nexari expected. Instead, they flowed like water, each species contributing their unique abilities to create controlled chaos. Human ships darted through impossible gaps, their hybrid drives allowing them to partially phase between dimensions. Lithoid dreadnoughts absorbed enemy fire on their crystalline hulls, redirecting the energy through quantum matrices developed by joint human-Archean research teams. The Overseer's response was immediate and devastating. Reality itself seemed to crack as the massive flagship unleashed weapons that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Several Allied ships were caught in the blast, their forms beginning to crystallize as they were encoded into the Nexari's preservation matrices. "They're adapting to the harmonic disruption," Bishop reported, his hands flying over the controls. "The luminary frequencies aren't holding." Drake nodded grimly. "Just as we expected. Signal the Prometheus. Captain Santos, you're clear to execute Phase 2. Across the battlefield, the Prometheus emerged from its hiding place in a dimensional pocket created by luminary technology. Its hybrid systems had been modified according to Dr. Patel's specifications, turning the ship itself into a massive quantum resonance chamber. Captain Santos's voice came through clear and determined. "Beginning quantum cascade. All ships, clear the central engagement zone." The Prometheus's crystalline components began to vibrate at frequencies that shouldn't have been possible in normal space. The vibration spread through the quantum foam of reality itself, creating a ripple effect that made the Nexari ship's perfect forms blur and distort. "What have you done?" The Overseer's thoughts held something new: fear. "The preservation matrices, they're destabilizing." "You preserve civilizations in crystal," Drake responded, "keeping them in perfect, unchanging stasis. But life isn't meant to be perfect or unchanging. Evolution, adaptation, chaos, these aren't flaws to be corrected. They're what make life worth preserving in the first place." The quantum cascade reached its peak. Throughout the battlefield, Nexari preservation matrices began to break down. From their crystalline prisons, the encoded essences of thousands of civilizations began to emerge. Not as they had been preserved, perfect and static, but as they had lived, chaotic, diverse, beautiful in their imperfection. The Overseer's flagship writhed in dimensional space, its perfect symmetry shattering. "You don't understand. Without preservation, without order, everything will fall into chaos." "No," Drake countered, watching as the combined fleet pressed their advantage. "What we understand, what you never could, is that true stability comes from adaptation, from change, from the very chaos you fear. Our differences make us stronger together than any single species could be alone." The battle reached its crescendo as the quantum cascade triggered a chain reaction through the Nexari fleet. Ships that had existed in multiple dimensions found themselves forced into single-dimensional space, their perfect forms unable to maintain coherence. "All ships, concentrated fire on the Overseer's flagship," Drake commanded. "Let's finish this." The Allied fleet struck as one: human ingenuity, Archean crystal tech, luminary energy manipulation, and lithoid quantum weapons all focused on a single point. The Overseer's flagship, stripped of its dimensional advantages, couldn't withstand the assault. Its crystalline form shattered, releasing waves of encoded information into space. In the aftermath, as Allied ships began rescue operations and salvage teams moved to recover what they could of Nexari technology, Drake stood at her viewport watching the debris field slowly disperse across the stars. "It's not over," Professor Zoltek noted, standing beside her. "There will be other Nexari out there, other preservation fleets." "Let them come," Drake replied with a slight smile. "We've proven that we're stronger together than apart. That diversity and chaos aren't weaknesses, but strengths. The age of preservation is over. The age of adaptation has begun." As rescue ships collected the freed essences of preserved civilizations, as human scientists worked alongside alien colleagues to stabilize the quantum foam of reality itself, a new chapter in galactic history was beginning. The Nexari had sought to create a perfect, unchanging cosmos. Instead, they had forced the younger races to overcome their differences and forge something far more valuable, a future where change was not just accepted, but celebrated. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter as the Allied fleet turned toward home, carrying with them not just victory, but hope for a galaxy where all species could grow, change, and thrive together in the beautiful chaos of existence.